Unlocking reality. Why your life is pure energy in motion. Think back to a day when you woke up feeling drained, frustrated, maybe even a little hopeless. You didn't even step out the door yet, but already there was a heaviness hanging over you. And if you paid attention, you probably noticed how the rest of the day unfolded. A string of annoyances, car trouble, missed deadlines, tense conversations. It wasn't coincidence. That low-frequency state you carried first thing in the morning didn't just stay inside you. It shaped everything that followed, pulling in more of the same. This isn't just about mood swings. It's about the energy you broadcast, the frequency you operate on, and how it quietly creates the reality you walk through. Before we dive into how to shift that frequency at its core, take a second. If you're ready to consciously recalibrate, hit like, subscribe, and help the channel hit its first 1,000 subscribers. And lock in your intention. Drop a comment below. I am ready to receive everything meant for me. Think of it as your signal to the universe that you're done operating on autopilot. Oh, and don't go anywhere. In part 6, I've saved a simple yet powerful method you can use daily to raise and keep your frequency at its highest. No fluff, no struggle. Let's get into it. The positive thinking trap. Why it's failing you and what actually works. Let's be honest. There's a reason the law of attraction gets treated like a life hack in pop culture. Repeat a few affirmations. Slap a vision board on your wall. Maybe journal about abundance. And supposedly the universe will rearrange itself like some personal concierge service. But look around. If it were that simple, wouldn't more people be living the life they scripted? This is where the conversation usually schemes the surface. Because repeating "I'm successful" is easy. What's hard, and what most skip entirely, is confronting the quieter, older narrative running beneath the surface. Neuroscience doesn't mince words on this. Around 95% of your behavior is governed by your subconscious. Not by what you consciously say, but by what you subconsciously believe. Picture it like this. You're consciously telling yourself, "I deserve abundance," but somewhere deeper an old script is still playing. "I'm not enough. Money causes problems. Success isn't safe." That's the frequency your life keeps tuning into, no matter how many affirmations you stack on top. Jim Carrey's story gets thrown around like the ultimate law of attraction success story. Everyone remembers the check he wrote to himself. $10 million for acting services rendered, dated years into the future. But most people gloss over the grind. Carrey wasn't just visualizing. He was out there every day, working, failing, getting rejected, improving, pushing through discomfort. The check in his wallet was a symbol, but the real leverage came from the belief system he was conditioning alongside the action. The belief that he could become that person, despite constant external evidence to the contrary. Now, contrast that with countless others who tried the same tactics, affirmations, visualization boards, but gave up when the universe didn't deliver overnight. They thought it was about the ritual, not realizing the rituals were meaningless if they left the underlying beliefs untouched. You can't layer positive phrases over a foundation of doubt and expect the structure to hold. The subconscious will always pull rank. This isn't just theory. It shows up in real life. Think about anyone you know who seems stuck in the same patterns, chasing new goals, new relationships, new projects, but somehow ending up back where they started. It's not lack of effort. It's that they're trying to build a new outcome on top of old, unresolved beliefs, like trying to paint over cracked walls without fixing the foundation. So here's something to consider, not as a rhetorical question, but something worth sitting with. When you set your intentions, when you say those affirmations, what's the belief beneath them? Do you feel aligned with them in your body, or does something tighten, resist, dismiss them as fantasy? Because that reaction, that discomfort, is pointing exactly to the part of your programming that's running the show. The real work isn't in saying new things. It's in unearthing the old ones you've let run unchecked. Only then does any surface-level tool, whether it's affirmations, visualizations, or vision boards, actually start to do what people hope they will. Otherwise, it's just noise layered over static. The hidden power of your heart, stronger than your mind, proven by science. We've spent centuries elevating the brain to near godlike status. It's the command center, the problem solver, the thing we're told separates us from everything else on the planet. Logic, analysis, strategy. That's where we believe power lies. But what if we've been so focused on the brain's calculations that we've completely underestimated something far older, far quieter, and ironically far more influential? That's where the heart steps in. Not metaphorically, literally. The HeartMath Institute cracked open a door that forces us to rethink everything. Their research showed that the electromagnetic field generated by the heart is not just strong, it's 5,000 times stronger than the brain's. 5,000. That's not a poetic flourish. It's a measurable, physical force radiating from the center of your chest, impacting not just your own body, but everyone and everything around you. You felt it before, whether you noticed or not. Ever been in a room where someone's presence shifts the air? No words exchanged, no logical reason, but suddenly you feel at ease, or on edge. That's not coincidence. That's the invisible field of the heart in action, transmitting emotional information far beyond facial expressions or tone. We've all experienced it. You can't fake it, and you can't intellectualize it away. And here's the wild part. Religions and spiritual traditions knew this long before science had the tools to catch up. Christianity places love at the center of its teachings. Not love as a nice idea, but as a transformative force. Buddhism devotes entire practices to cultivating compassion and loving kindness, training the heart as deliberately as we might train the body. These aren't abstract moral lessons, they're energetic recalibrations. Modern neuroscience is only now starting to explain what mystics, saints, and sages have been teaching for centuries. Feelings like gratitude, forgiveness, joy, when genuinely felt, not just thought, sink the heart and brain into a state of coherence. Cortisol drops, nervous system balance improves, creativity spikes, your capacity to problem solve and connect deepens. Not because you forced yourself to think positive, but because you shifted the frequency you operate on. This isn't some esoteric concept reserved for monks or mystics. You can tap into it right now, in the middle of your ordinary, hectic life. It doesn't require years of study or perfect conditions. All it asks is presence. Place your hand over your chest. Slow your breath. Picture something or someone you are profoundly grateful for, not in a checklist way, but in a way that softens you from the inside out. 3 minutes. That's all it takes to begin shifting the energy you carry and project. And if you're honest, how often do you default to trying to think your way out of stress? Hustle harder, analyze more, add another task to the to-do list. How often has that actually worked long-term? What if the power you've been looking for, the clarity, the calm, the ability to handle whatever life throws, has been in your chest the entire time, quietly waiting for you to tune in? What if the heart isn't just a poetic symbol, but the most direct access point you have to real change, not only in yourself, but in how the world responds to you? Imagine what would shift if you stopped leading with your head and started leading with your heart, on purpose. Emotional frequencies. How negative feelings secretly sabotage your life. Some people live as if they're stuck under a permanent rain cloud, wondering why every time they fix one problem, another lands in their lap. They blame the market, their childhood, bad timing, other people's mistakes. But if you strip all the noise away, what you'll often find is something much more subtle. A self-perpetuating loop fueled not by circumstance, but by the emotional undercurrent they're carrying. One client of mine embodied this perfectly. On the surface, he was set, running a profitable business, had the lifestyle, the connections, the freedom most people chase. But no matter how much he achieved, he couldn't shake the gnawing fear beneath it all. He was constantly on guard, micromanaging, double-checking, bracing for loss. Every decision was laced with anxiety. And strangely, or maybe not so strangely, the financial hits kept coming. Deals collapsed at the last minute. Clients backed out. Unexpected crises drained resources. He couldn't see that his energy wasn't neutral. It was broadcasting scarcity, distrust, and panic. And what does the world do when you send out that signal? It responds in kind. You can trace this pattern in more than just business. Think about the relationships where one person is always paranoid about being abandoned. How often does that very fear cause them to act in ways, clingy, defensive, guarded, that push the other person away? Or the employee who believes the boss is out to get them, so they start underperforming out of stress, practically ensuring the fallout they were dreading. It's not random. Biologically, there's an explanation. When you sit in emotions like fear, resentment, or frustration, your body responds as if there's immediate danger. Cortisol spikes, adrenaline floods your system, your brain shifts into tunnel vision. You're no longer scanning for solutions, you're scanning for threats. And because your perception narrows, you miss opportunities, misread situations, and make decisions that match the fear you're swimming in. Over time, this biochemical feedback loop hardens into a way of being. But here's the thing no one talks about. The loop isn't self-correcting. It feeds itself unless you consciously interrupt it. It's like a radio stuck between stations, picking up static. You can't hear the music clearly until you stop, adjust the dial, and lock onto a clean frequency. Interestingly, ancient wisdom understood this long before science caught up. Scripture repeats one instruction over and over. Do not be afraid, not because fear won't arise, but because fear distorts, clouds judgment, shrinks perspective, makes the worst seem inevitable. Jesus didn't tell people to strategize their way out of uncertainty. He told them to trust, to release the grip, to focus inward where clarity lives. So let's make this less theoretical. Picture the last time something fell apart. A deal, a relationship, a plan. How did you respond? Did you tighten, brace, start running worst-case scenarios in your head? Or did you recognize the moment you had the option to step out of the loop? Because here's the truth. The world reflects the frequency you're radiating. If you stay locked in survival mode, constantly scanning for the next hit, you'll keep attracting situations that prove you right. But shift your inner broadcast. Slow down, recalibrate, choose trust over tension, and suddenly, life stops mirroring the static. So ask yourself honestly, are you reacting from the residue of old fears? Or are you ready to tune into something entirely different? What would your life look like if you changed the signal altogether? Quantum secrets. How infinite possibilities are waiting for you to choose. Quantum physics has a way of making even the most logical minds uncomfortable. At its core, it shatters the idea of fixed reality. Subatomic particles don't settle into one state or position until they're observed. Until then, they exist in a cloud of probabilities, every potential outcome all at once. It's not science fiction. It's the double-slit experiment, replicated countless times. Reality at its smallest scale waits on the observer. Now apply that to daily life. Imagine life isn't a straight path, but a loaded die, except instead of 6 sides, there are thousands. Each side is a possible outcome. Success, failure, breakthrough, setback, love, loss. What decides which side shows up? Not luck, not some rigid destiny. It's your focus, your observation, your expectation. When you approach life weighed down by doubt, fear, or a sense of inevitability, you tune yourself to outcomes that match that vibration. You might not even realize how often you observe the worst, locking in the result before the roll even hits the table. It's no coincidence this mirrors teachings found far outside a science lab. Jesus spoke repeatedly about faith, Not blind hope, but unwavering conviction. According to your faith, be it unto you. He wasn't preaching abstract philosophy. He was pointing to a fundamental principle: how inner belief interacts with external experience. Eastern traditions echo the same. The outer world reflects the inner state. Of course, critics argue that tying quantum physics to personal development is pseudoscience. They'll say the probabilistic behavior of particles has no bearing on the macro world. Our jobs, relationships, goals. But isn't that missing the point? The very essence of quantum mechanics is uncertainty, potentiality, the refusal of matter to behave predictably. Why wouldn't that same framework, at a broader level, allow for infinite outcomes based on how we observe, interpret, and act? It's not about twisting science to fit self-help narratives. It's about recognizing that, at every moment, reality isn't fixed. It's responsive, flexible, alive with possibilities. So the question becomes, how are you observing your life right now? Are you stuck watching the same limiting outcome over and over, convinced it's all there is? Or are you willing to entertain the idea that, like those particles, your future hasn't settled yet, that your belief, your focus, might tip the die in ways you haven't imagined? Mastering your vibration, the ultimate key to sustained abundance and joy. Most people treat positive emotions like a temporary high, something they chase, feel for a moment, and then lose the minute life throws a curveball. They meditate once, feel a little better, maybe say a few affirmations, but by mid-afternoon, they're back to stress, frustration, or autopilot, and they wonder why nothing shifts long-term. Here's the truth. Fleeting moments of high vibration won't rewire your life. The real shift happens when that elevated state becomes your default, not your exception. You ever notice how elite athletes, top performers, even deeply spiritual figures, all seem to operate in this consistent flow, almost like they're on a different wavelength? That's not luck. It's conditioning. Take someone like Kobe Bryant. He wasn't just physically gifted. He had what he called the Mamba mentality, a relentless, daily commitment to a certain mindset. His mornings, his focus, even his downtime, were rituals designed to keep him in that state. Not once in a while, always. The same principle applies to vibration. If you want to maintain a high frequency, you can't leave it to chance. You have to build in cues, anchors, practices that constantly pull you back. When the world or your own thoughts try to drag you down, it starts before your day even begins. There's a window, right when you wake up, where your mind hasn't grabbed its usual worries yet. Most people ruin it by immediately checking their phones, scrolling through news or social media, letting the outside world hijack their mood. But if you pause, just for a few minutes, and deliberately visualize the day unfolding effortlessly, feel the gratitude for things going right before they even happen, you set the tone. Your nervous system gets the message. Today, you lead the energy, not the other way around. But of course, life doesn't stop poking at you. That's why you need triggers embedded throughout your day. Simple reminders. Maybe it's a note on your lock screen. Trust, gratitude, abundance. Maybe it's a quiet breath every time you stop at a red light, checking back in with that elevated state. Sounds basic, but these micro-interruptions prevent you from slipping back into reactive mode. And the real magic happens at night. Science shows the brain enters a more suggestible state before sleep. Your subconscious is wide open. Instead of replaying worries, what if you used that window to flood your system with appreciation? Replaying the best moments, no matter how small, that's not wishful thinking. It's reinforcement. It teaches your brain and body that positivity, trust, and ease are the norm. Let me ask you, how often do you let the world dictate your energy, instead of consciously setting it? What if, instead of chasing peace and success like something outside yourself, you trained your system to live there by default? How might your reality respond if your baseline frequency was always one step ahead of your circumstances? 5 undeniable signs your energy is transforming your reality. One of the strangest parts of real change is how quiet it feels. It doesn't announce itself with a clear sign, no flashing lights, no sudden fireworks. Instead, it slips in under the surface, so subtly that at first, you almost miss it, but you start to notice small shifts. The things that used to rattle you barely stir a reaction. The people who once drained your energy seem to fade from your life. Patterns you once clung to lose their grip, and you're left wondering when exactly the ground underneath you moved. A close friend of mine learned this firsthand. She'd spent years chasing the next thing, new opportunities, better relationships, external markers that told her she was getting somewhere. But she always felt like she was running uphill, never quite able to relax, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. One day, something cracked. Instead of pushing harder, she did the opposite. Each morning, she carved out a quiet space, before her phone, before emails, before anyone else could reach her. She sat with herself and found anything to be grateful for. Sometimes it was something big. Often it wasn't. She didn't do it mechanically. She let herself actually feel it, even if only for a few minutes. No grand intentions, no goal attached to it. First, nothing changed. The job frustrations, the anxious thoughts, they were all still there. But slowly, something internal shifted. She wasn't reacting the same way. She stopped clinging. She stopped needing things to happen on her timeline. And a few months later, out of the blue, an opportunity she'd once convinced herself was out of reach landed in her lap. She hadn't chased it. She hadn't networked for it. Came to her. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't magic. It was alignment. When her internal state shifted, her external world rearranged itself to match. What's powerful is not the big win. That's just the byproduct. The deeper sign, the real confirmation, is how you start to move through your life differently. There's an ease you can't fake. You stop reaching. You stop gripping so tightly, trying to control every detail. You don't feel the need to keep old relationships alive just because they've always been there. People, habits, and opportunities that no longer match you quietly slip away. And even when they do, there's no panic, no sense of loss, just a calm recognition that what's leaving is making space for something more aligned. This process often confuses people. We're conditioned to measure progress by what's visible: promotions, material gain, social validation. But the deeper work rarely looks like that at first. It looks like letting go of old coping mechanisms. It looks like responding to difficulty without spiraling. It looks like peace settling in before anything outside you changes. That's the irony. Real transformation shows up internally, long before the external shifts catch up. It's not a clean, linear process. There will be days when doubt creeps back in, when you wonder if anything's actually happening. But if you pay close attention, you'll notice you're not reacting the way you used to. The same chaos might be swirling around you, but you're no longer hooked by it. You're not scrambling for control. And in that quiet steadiness, unexpected things begin to flow toward you, not because you forced them, but because you finally stopped blocking them. This isn't about avoiding hardship or manufacturing constant positivity. It's about no longer being at the mercy of your circumstances. You become less like a leaf tossed by the wind, more like the tree, rooted, stable, unaffected by every passing storm. That's the real sign you've shifted frequency, when your peace is no longer conditional. And if you really think about it, what's more valuable than that? God, science, and energy, where ancient faith meets modern quantum physics. It's easy to think of religion and modern psychology as two entirely separate worlds, one rooted in faith, the other in empirical science. But if you look closely, the overlap is almost undeniable, especially when it comes to how belief shapes reality. Take Christianity, for instance. The phrase "believe, and you shall receive" isn't just spiritual encouragement. It's a distilled version of an energetic law. What you expect, what you truly trust in, manifests outwardly. Islam carries a parallel idea in the concept of tawakkul, the practice of surrendering to God after doing your part, releasing control but anchored in unwavering trust. Different language, same core principle. The internal state creates the external outcome. Now, fast forward to modern psychology. Strip away the spiritual framing, and what do we find? The self-fulfilling prophecy, a concept proven over and over in behavioral studies. You hold a belief consciously or not, and that belief guides your decisions, emotions, even your perception of opportunities. Act as though success is inevitable, and your actions align with that expectation. Act as though failure is around every corner, and soon enough the results reinforce that view. It's not magic, it's mechanics. One experiment I always come back to involved teachers being told that certain students in their class were intellectual bloomers, based on a special test. In reality, the students were randomly selected, but over time, those students began performing better, not because they suddenly became smarter, but because the teacher's belief subtly shifted how they interacted with them. Expectations became reality. Sound familiar? Even Jesus' teachings seem to echo this idea. His miracles often followed not just faith, but people's willingness to believe before seeing proof. The belief itself opened the door. Psychology just gave that process a clinical name. But here's what's interesting. Whether framed as divine trust or cognitive conditioning, both traditions are pointing at the same thing. Reality bends to the strength of conviction. Your internal narrative isn't just a private thought. It's the blueprint shaping your external world. And yet, how often do we walk around treating our doubts as more real than our faith? Whether that faith is religious or simply belief in our own ability. If science and religion both agree that belief is the lever, what happens when you finally take responsibility for which belief you're choosing to hold? Maybe the gap between ancient teachings and modern theory isn't as wide as we think. Maybe they've both been describing the same law all along, just in different dialects. Is the law of attraction real or just psychological comfort? Here's the truth. Critics love to reduce concepts like energy, vibration, or the law of attraction to nothing more than psychological fluff, placebo effects dressed up in spiritual language. The argument goes something like this. You feel better because you think something's working, not because there's any real force at play. But here's the twist. Placebo or not, if the end result is a calmer mind, healthier body, and better life outcomes, doesn't that in itself speak volumes about the power of belief? Dig a little deeper, though, and you'll find it's not just a mental trick or a soft cushion against life's challenges. Neuroscience backs this up, not in theory, but in hard data. When you maintain emotional states like love, gratitude, or joy, your brain responds chemically. Serotonin and dopamine, two neurotransmitters linked to happiness, focus, and cognitive sharpness, start flowing more freely. These aren't minor mood boosters. They're directly responsible for how well you process information, how creative you are, how resilient you become in the face of obstacles. It's not abstract. Studies using fMRI scans show how positive emotional states light up the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain associated with decision-making, problem-solving, and higher-order thinking. So when you're vibrating high, it's not just a metaphor. Your brain's wiring literally shifts to support more effective action. Think about the implications of that. The emotional state you hold isn't passively attracting good things like some magical magnet. It's priming your body and mind to notice opportunities, to connect dots faster, to make bold moves without being paralyzed by fear. What skeptics often dismiss as naive optimism is actually a neurochemical advantage. Even placebo itself isn't as dismissible as some might think. The fact that belief alone can spark measurable changes in health and behavior shows how profoundly the mind influences physical reality. In that sense, whether you call it placebo, faith, or energetic alignment, the result is the same. Belief alters biology, and biology alters behavior. So maybe the question isn't whether this is just psychological comfort. Maybe the more interesting question is, why do we undervalue the mechanisms that clearly improve our lives, simply because they don't fit a rigid materialist narrative? If belief backed by science can rewire your brain and change your outcomes, does it really matter what label we slap on it? Your energy, your reality. One challenge that could change everything. By now, should be clear. Thoughts are just the surface. The real architecture of your life is built far deeper, in your emotions, your subconscious beliefs, and the energetic field generated by your heart. That's the foundation shaping every decision you make, every interaction you have, and ultimately, the reality you experience. Shifting that foundation isn't about repeating a few affirmations or forcing positive thinking. It's about rewiring what's happening beneath the surface, where your true patterns live. But here's the part most people overlook. This isn't an overnight fix. It's not a feel-good once-and-done kind of process. Reprogramming your emotional state, recalibrating your energetic field, takes time, discipline, and daily commitment, not because change is hard, but because consistency is the bridge between knowing something intellectually and embodying it fully. So here's the challenge. For the next 21 days, commit to this. Start and end your day deliberately cultivating the emotional states of gratitude, trust, and love. No distractions, no shortcuts, just a few intentional minutes each morning and night. Tune into what it feels like to already have what you want, to be who you want to be. Let that frequency settle into your body. Before you touch your phone, before you scroll, before the outside world gets a say. And then watch. Watch how people respond differently. Watch how situations start shifting. Watch how opportunities feel like they're showing up out of nowhere. But in truth, you've simply begun matching them internally first. If you're ready to stop being pulled by old habits and start consciously creating, drop the comment, I choose to create my own reality. Let's see what happens when you take control of the signal. If this message resonates with you, hit the like button and subscribe. You'll get more content designed to help you recalibrate from the inside out, not just on the surface.